I'm often asked, well, okay, who will disclose? There really are a limited number of possibilities here, because if the announcement does not come from a sufficiently substantial venue, it could fall flat in its face. All risk, no reward. Here are the basic list of possibilities. In a mature world that had its act together, it would be the UN. But the UN is still not recovered from its Cold War role. The Security Council still has it by the throat. It has been co-opted, it's underfunded, it's been ridiculed, marginalized, it's got a lot of corruption now. And so now when we really could use it, because it's the logical entity to do this, it's not going to happen. The UN's not going to be able to do it. The most likely would be a country, a nation, a major nation. The short list of those nations, in my view, is starting in the least likely, which would be Brazil, then France, then the United Kingdom, then Russia, then People's Republic of China, and then the United States. These are one of the 6 countries that could end up making the initial move. Because that's what it's down to. The vast majority of people know there's something going on. Over half the public thinks it's extraterrestrial. And it really comes down to who is going to go first. Right? Okay. Now, there are a couple other possibilities. One would be a major religion. The Catholic Church is probably the most structured religion in the world, and so they could do it. If the Pope were to announce the presence of extraterrestrials, it would probably stick. But that's not going to happen. There are very significant problems and risk of a faith to come to the world and say there's extraterrestrials here. It could create a lot of problems for that faith that they really don't need. So I don't think it will be that. And then another possibility is definitely the European Union. The European Union offers some interesting positives. First of all, it is a substantial structure. It represents 27 countries, about 400 million people, which is a little larger than the United States. But still, 27 countries of the 200, that's over 10% of the countries in the world. But it is a collection of countries, and so that have a range of politics, right? There's a various range of politics and cultures within the EU, and so if it were to disclose, it's somewhat representative, and it takes the onus off a particular nation to have to quote answer all the world's questions and take all of the world's scrutiny, which is exactly what the U.S. is going to have to deal with, and it's not going to be easy. Plus, it would be a significant legacy for the EU to do this, so that it would raise its global prestige dramatically and help empower it for those that would like to see that. There are some who would like to see the EU disbanded. But if one cares about the EU, and if one is in fact part of the EU governance, I think they ought to seriously consider the possibility of the EU making this maneuver. And I would certainly be more than happy to discuss that with any representative of the European Union. It's worth noting that within the European Union, France issued a report in 2000, actually early 2000, that pretty much stated clearly that the extraterrestrial explanation was in fact the only way to account for the UFO phenomenon. This was by a pretty heavy-duty group made up of former defense personnel as well as admirals and generals. Right? Then 4 years later, France started releasing thousands of its UFO case files. Then the UK started doing that, and they've made 6 releases of those. Tens of thousands of cases, many tens of thousands of pages. Denmark has released its files. Sweden has released 60,000 files. Belgium has had quite a history with respect to certain sightings, and members of the Belgian military recently appeared in the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. To address this issue. And of course, one of the most famous cases in the world occurred at Rendlesham Forest, Bentwaters nuclear arms facility, and that case is in the news still. And so there is plenty of history and actions on the part of EU nations related to this. And so it's not an illogical step for the European Union to say, let's step forward and do this on behalf of our 27 nations and get this going. But the most likely path here is the United States, which initiated this truth embargo, obtained relatively easily the compliance of its World War II allies. It was not concerned about Soviet Union or Communist China revealing the ET presence, because that would have been anathema to those countries. It would have significantly threatened the ideological governance that they had, basically their ideological security states, based upon complete loyalty to the state and the state's icons, and learning about all-powerful civilizations from elsewhere that could care less about the state's icons was not going to service their agendas. And so the U.S. wasn't worried about them. And so the U.S. has led this truth embargo for 6 decades, and there's, I think, this understanding that it's the U.S. that should end it. And if that's the way it is, that's the way it is. However, I should make it clear to anybody that cares that there is an increasing possibility that the disclosure nation is going to be the People's Republic of China. There are many reasons for this, too many to go into here, but of note, there have been a rash of sightings in China that are getting covered by the Chinese press, and is getting right out to the West, particularly through the People's Daily, which has an internet presence. 6 or 7 Chinese airports have been shut down in just the last 6 months. They can't explain it. China didn't have to let that news out. China can pretty much contain most things of that nature. There have been some statements from some of the Chinese astronomers, which are quite interesting. Is China, which has always viewed itself as the most ancient nation on the planet, and clearly underappreciated and often insulted by the West, which has the second most powerful economy in the world, holding many, many hundreds of billions of U.S. paper dollars, and a massive exporter to the world, would China consider taking that legacy to itself and being the great truth teller to the world? Anyone that thinks that they wouldn't do it would be making a grave mistake. And so, depending upon your geopolitical viewpoints, will it be the Communist Party that tells the truth to the American people, or will it be the Democratic Party that tells the truth? I say that there are implications, and that the administration of Barack Obama had better pay attention. Well, certainly. I mean, there should be lobbying efforts going on in every major nation in the world. There should be citizens' initiatives in every nation in the world. The truth embargo is to minimize that. I'm still the only registered lobbyist in the United States, and I guess in the world, since I'm not sure there are lobbyists in other nations. But the truth embargo has maintained and ghettoized this issue sufficiently that institutions in general are not willing to engage it properly. So what we have is a cyberspace movement. In other words, most of what we're able to do now is made possible by the Internet. And the Internet is, in fact, the future of all political activism. In fact, it's the future of all politics. And we're just a little ahead of the curve. Recently, a resolution was introduced to the European Union by, I think, a member of the European Parliament, which was fine. It generated some good news. But I think a more appropriate way would be to have the head of the European Union or one of their key committees to agree to take some testimony from some key people. It would be not too difficult to put together 10, 15 pretty significant witnesses to come in and testify. They will understand this stuff has been proven long ago. But nevertheless, to get a taste of what's going on, so that they might consider engaging this issue. Whatever it takes, frankly, I don't care. Whatever it takes for the EU to take serious posture on this, I can assure you there are people prepared to step forward and help that happen, right? And I can tell you something else. Aside from what any foreign minister might say about this issue, and they are, after all, diplomats, I can say with complete confidence that there are members of the military and intelligence institutions of every single major European country that are fully aware of the extraterrestrial presence and have been for decades. All right, this is nothing new. They know about it, and the question is, are they going to act internally to get something done about it? So it's not like we're educating, important key people in these governments to what's going on. Many of them already know. So it's a bit of a chess game going on here. It is very complicated, and yet in some ways it's very simple. It's increasingly very much like the Hans Christian Andersen fable, The Emperor's New Clothes. It's obtaining that kind of silliness where we're all standing around, and it's a question of who's the first person to happen to mention that the emperor is stark naked, and that's, of course, the extraterrestrial presence. Somebody eventually is going to raise their hand and say, look, enough is enough. The ETs are here, fine, let's deal with it. If I were asked to send a message to any institution or government, the UN, the EU, the United States government administration, whatever, it would be this, that the extraterrestrial presence, like the Copernican revolution, is reality, and reality will out. Right? The Catholic Church was able to sort of contain the Copernican revolution for about 100 years, but did anybody seriously think that that was going to last? The extraterrestrial presence embargo has lasted 63 years. It will out. And as I've said, I think it's done. I think it could happen tomorrow. And so things will break down this way. Either you were, as an institution of governance, serving, quote, people, maybe millions, maybe hundreds of millions of people, either you were engaging the most important issue in the history of the human race, or you had a paper bag over your head and you were hiding under the bed. How do you wish to be perceived? Do you wish to be perceived as deaf, dumb, and blind and refusing to engage reality? Or do you wish to be received as an entity trying to get to the bottom of the issue and bring it out on behalf of your people? It's one or the other. You're not going to get to have both. And so the message is, I don't know who will ultimately initiate the truth embargo, end the truth embargo, but when they do, if you're sitting there acting like you haven't the slightest idea what's going on, and you've made no effort whatsoever to resolve it, you're not going to look very good, and history is not going to be very kind. And so you have a limited amount of time to start governing. And one of the key points of governance is to present to your citizens reality, to let them know the nature of the world and how it really is, so that they can decide how they want themselves governed and how to run their lives. Lying to citizens about reality is the ultimate act of betrayal by the state, worse than almost any other. And it's happened many times in the last 8,000 years, and every time it did not go well. And now we have the big one, right? Either you are telling the truth about this or you're lying about it. Which side are you on?